Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. So today we're going to unpack this really charming and honestly surprisingly insightful theatrical script. We're looking at a super short scene, basically just a quick, snappy exchange between fruits and vegetables in the middle of a bustling market. But here's the thing. Beneath the surface of this whole talking produce bit, there is a fascinating microcosm of human behavior. It's all about social dynamics and the literal anatomy of a conflict. We're going to break down exactly what makes this short source text tick and specifically look at how one simple misunderstanding actually teaches us a whole lot about how we navigate shared spaces.
Right, so let's just dive right into it. Think about this for a second. Have you ever argued over the right-of-way in a public space? Like, you know the drill? Have you ever found yourself in one of those surprisingly heated standoffs over a parking spot? Or maybe you've waged that completely silent, tense battle for the armrest on a crowded train? Or doing that awkward, kind of aggressive little dance trying to maneuver a shopping cart down a narrow grocery aisle? That happens, right? Because it is entirely human nature to get territorial, even in places that literally belong to everyone. And in the script we're exploring today, we actually see this exact dynamic play out through a fictional, totally comedic vegetable turf war. It perfectly mirrors our everyday human behaviors.
Section 1. The bustling market. Setting the scene.
Okay, so to really grasp this conflict, we've got to understand the environment first. The text doesn't ease us in. No, it immediately throws us straight into the deep end of a super high-energy situation. Right from the opening lines, the script establishes these totally clashing temperaments. We meet this tomato who is practically vibrating with anxiety and urgency. The tomato says, "Man, there is so much work in the market today, hurry up." But then we have the apple, who is just completely dragging his feet. He replies, "Hey brother, what is the rush? I'm not even fully prepared yet." We instantly get this brilliant contrast, right? The fast, breathless, stressed-out energy of the tomato crashing right into the sluggish, totally unbothered reluctance of the apple. It builds up this great foundation of underlying tension before the real conflict even kicks off.
Moving on to Section 2, the turf war, a clash of boundaries.
So as the apple and tomato are bickering about how fast they should be going, they look over toward the vegetable section. Suddenly, this totally unexpected territorial dispute pops up and just cranks the tension right up to 10. They spot okra, or bindi, as she's named in the original Urdu text, walking towards them. And man, she immediately lays down the law. In this really stern, completely uncompromising voice, she says, "Excuse me, this path is only for fruits. Vegetables do not come here." I mean, just think about the sheer absurdity of that statement for a second. She is standing smack in the middle of a chaotic, shared public market, and suddenly she's claiming a physical path with this invisible, entirely arbitrary boundary. It's just this incredibly strict boundary-setting moment that comes completely out of nowhere.
And the apple? The guy who was just dragging his feet a second ago? He instantly goes on the offensive. He claps back with this incredibly arrogant, completely sarcastic tone. "Wow, have you become the owner of the path too?" You can practically hear the ego just dripping from his words. The apple clearly feels entirely entitled to walk wherever the heck he pleases. And the second he's challenged by this random rule, his absolute first knee-jerk defensive reaction is to just mock the okra's authority.
But here's the thing. Okra does not back down, not even a little bit. She snaps back quickly and firmly, saying, "This is everyone's market, not your estate." This is absolutely crucial, right? Okra completely stands her ground. She utterly refuses to be intimidated by the apple's sarcasm. She just flawlessly flips the script on his entitlement by reminding him, hey, this is a communal space, he doesn't own it, and his assumed privilege? Yeah, it doesn't apply here.
And this little back and forth brilliantly illustrates the core conflict of the whole scene. On one side, we've got the apple's entitlement, his initial sarcasm, his defensive posture, the way he assumes privilege as he navigates the space. On the flip side, we've got okra's boundary setting. Even if her initial rule about the path was a little bit absurd, her core argument hits the nail on the head. It's a firm reminder that shared spaces belong to everyone, not just those who act like they own the place. What we're watching is this rapid-fire clash of massive ego versus communal reality.
Which brings us to Section 3, a surprising apology, the art of de-escalation. Now look, if this were a typical human argument over a parking spot or a place in line, this is exactly the moment where things would just totally spiral out of control. Voices would get louder, insults might start flying, and egos would just lock into this bitter, pointless stalemate. But right here, at the literal climax of the scene, this interaction suddenly defies all of our expectations. The apple's next move is essentially a masterclass in conflict resolution. We can actually break his reaction down into 3 brilliant sequential beats.
First up, the text explicitly notes that he softens his tone of voice. He physically lowers the temperature of the whole interaction. Second, he drops his ego, admits fault, and actually apologizes. He says, sorry, maybe I was wrong. And third, and honestly, this is probably the most important part, he validates the other's perspective by repeating her own truth right back to her. You are right, this is everyone's market. Boom. In just one single sentence, he completely dismantles the confrontation.
So, what's the result of this masterful de-escalation? Well, the script actually ends with a very simple stage direction. Okra looks on in sheer astonishment. She is literally left in stunned silence. It's such a powerful image to conclude the scene on, really showing how a graceful, genuine apology can completely disarm hostility. When you truly acknowledge someone else's point and you just let go of your own desperate need to win the argument, it leaves the other party totally speechless. The fight doesn't even happen. It just evaporates into thin air.
Which leaves us with this final, kind of provocative thought to chew on. If an apple, a literal, fictional piece of fruit, can recognize its own entitlement, soften its tone, let go of its ego, and offer a truly sincere apology, why on earth is it so hard for us humans to do the same thing in our everyday lives? The next time you find yourself getting all defensive over a shared space, or you feel your ego flaring up in some minor public dispute, honestly, remember the apple and the okra. Sometimes the absolute most powerful thing you can do is just take a breath and say, sorry, maybe I was wrong. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it gave you a fresh perspective to take out into the bustling market of the real world.